I'm Lesley Canarium, Reader Conversations Librarian at the Rogers Public Library, and our November Adult Take It, Make It project is these cute little rustic stuffed pumpkins. Very easy sewing project, but there is some sewing involved, so if you have hand problems like mine, you'll have to be patient with yourself and pace yourself. Um, and also, you will need to provide needles and thread because I didn't really want to be handing out sharps in plastic bags. So, but that is the only safety caution I'd have for this particular project. In your kit, you're going to find 3 pieces of fabric, a little one like this, then a medium-sized one, and a big one. They're all going to be different, but they'll be coordinated in fall colors and patterns. And for each one, you'll just start by taking your fabric, putting the right side up. Boy, this one really doesn't matter, but right sides together and fold it like this so the edges meet. You can pin it if you like, but I'm honestly pretty lazy. And the great thing about this project is almost all the sewing is on the inside, so it doesn't matter how sloppy you are. We're going to sew this end together that's opposite the fold. So give it about a 3/8 of an inch, half an inch seam. I'm a terrible seamstress, but nobody will know because nobody will see my sewing. You can use a running stitch here if you like, but I find a back stitch to be the easiest for me personally. Once again, it doesn't matter as long as it's securely sewn together. This particular stitch I'm doing is a back stitch, which I like because it's fast and strong. You make it just by pulling your needle through, then going back, and then pushing the point of the needle a little bit ahead of where it came out, and then going back again about halfway into that stitch, hence the name back stitch. And doing it that way, it sort of makes a zipper effect, I think. It's the way your sewing machine does it. So the threads interlock, which means I can be sloppy with my stitches and it'll still just be as strong. You do want it to be strong because we will be stuffing these, though we won't be stuffing them very full. But, you're going to be pushing and pulling, and you don't want it all to fall apart, your seams to fall apart halfway through. And if you get a knot in your thread, like I said, nobody can see, so just tease it out, pull it through. If worse comes to worse, you say, oh, the heck with it. And just, like Winston, no, it was the Duke of Wellington who said, when things get sticky and I'm at the end of my rope, I just tie a knot and go on. I'm using, as you can see, a thread here that does not match the fabric at all. It doesn't matter. Matter of fact, even if some of the thread shows, I think it kind of adds to the nice sort of rustic, artsy, crafty look of these pumpkins. So, okay, when you reach the end, just tie a knot. And snip your thread. Okay, you can see here this very unbeautiful seam, but it'll do the job. Because I was lazy and also forgot to bring a pen with me, I ended up getting the corners a little bit off. Doesn't matter. I'll just snip that bit. Boom, it's gone. And what you have is a tube of fabric here with the right side on the inside still. What we're going to do now is gather the top and the bottom. There's a couple of ways you can do that. The easiest way is the easiest way for me is if you happen to have an embroidery or quilter's needle. That's the kind with the big eye. And you can fit into that 2 separate strands of thread. You're going to want to have at least 4 strands going because you need this gathering to be strong. You don't want it to break. So I took a blue thread and a brown thread here to make it a little easier to see, and also if it gets tangled up, I can fix it better, and fed them both through the eye of the needle at the same time. But if you just have the kind of needle with a little tiny eye, that's okay. You can just put your thread through, double it, do your gathering stitch once, and then do another gathering stitch that matches as close as you can on top of it. But as you can guess, doing it all at once is a little bit easier. A gathering stitch is just a simple running stitch, but you want to make it as regular as you can. So you start just putting your needle in, pulling it out, and you want to leave a good long tail on the end. So when you're putting in your knots, keep that in mind. Now the tricky part with a gathering stitch is, and then you just put it in and out, in and out, in and out. You want to keep it regular. The smaller your stitches are, the tighter your gathers. The bigger they are, the looser the gathers. But also the smaller your stitches, the harder it is to do the actual gathering. So you're trying to want to get a happy medium there. I like to get gathering a running stitch. That's about maybe 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch long. Especially when you're doing the gathering on the bottom part, pull the gathers together as you go, because that'll make it a lot easier in the long run than trying to tighten it all at once. You're going to have to do that for the top, but there's always the chance your thread will break if you do your gathering all at once. So it's better to just do it as you go. In and out, in and out. Just like you were making a ruffles. If you've ever sewn something with ruffles on it, I suppose. But you do not want to do any back stitching here. You want to just make it a regular running stitch, because if you try and back stitch, go backwards on your running stitch, on your gathering stitch, you will lock it up and the thing will get messed up. So if you decide, oh no, I made my stitches too big and the filling's going to come out, don't worry about that. There's a fix for that you can do afterwards. And I'll show you how to do that when we get to the top of the pumpkin. Or I suppose down here if I need it, but hopefully I won't. This is actually a great little project if you're teaching kids how to sew, because the stitches are so basic and it is so forgiving to any mess ups. And it looks cute. So you can see how this tube is now turning into sort of a cone. It's all getting gathered together here at the bottom. And tie. your knot very tight here so it all stays together, all 4 strands together. I deliberately did this long so I will have enough thread to do the top too, but that's kind of tempting fate. You don't want these things to get, your threads to get tangled either, because if you have to put a knot in a gathering stitch, that's not a happy circumstance. Okay. So let's untangle them. Tie a knot at the end, leaving myself a good few inches. Tie another knot at the end. You want to try and line these up here so it doesn't get too much tangled at the. Now you're going to turn it right side out, ta-da, and you can see already how we got a little kind of pucker here going on. You're going to do another gathering stitch along the top, but this time you're not going to pull it tight as you do it. You're going to want to ruffle it a little to make sure you can, but you need to leave that top open so we have some place to stuff the pumpkin. So there we go. Once again, you probably don't want these gathering seam to be quite as big as the one you did for the sewing together, the side seam. So maybe 1/2 inch. The ruffle will tuck itself in, but you don't, need to make it worse for yourself. So you can see I'm kind of ruffling it as I go just to make sure that that thread is not, is flowing nice and smoothly, but I'm not really pulling it tight like I did on the bottom. You can take a bunch of stitches together if you like, because as long as you keep them fairly even and regular, they don't have to be beautiful. So you see that's doing nicely. Okay, we're coming up to the end here. I can see my little tail of thread. Okay, bring it right back to the beginning. And what you are not going to do now is you are not going to tie a knot, not yet, and you're not going to even cut that thread. Just leave that needle in place, but you want to be aware of it because you don't want to stick yourself with it, because now we're going to stuff the pumpkin. And you should have gotten some fiber fill in your kit. I hope there's enough. But if there isn't, you can get any at a craft store or even use scrap fabric. It's not a fussy project. I know somebody who used to use the inside of pencil sharpeners, the shavings, to stuff things like this. And we want to stuff it just enough so it's nice and plump, but you're not going to be stuffing it, really full like you would if it was a stuffed animal or a pillow or something. So just soften so it rounds out nicely. Okay. That looks maybe just a little bit more. Just so it's a happy plump pumpkin there. Okay. Now you take your two threads. You've got the tail from the beginning and the tail from the end, and gently, gently, you're going to want to pull them through, gathering, pushing down the fiber fill and gathering as you go. Don't want to pull it too hard because, if your thread breaks, you'll be sad, but worst things that happens is you'll just have to start again and put in another row of gathering stitches. Get it as closed as you can. Tie your knot, double knot it nice and firm. And the reason we left that needle in place is we want to look over and saying, well, now I am going to take off my glasses so I can look closely. Is that really as closed as it needs to be? Well, I'm just going to take a few stitches there at the top just to make sure it's all nicely closed because we don't want any fillings coming out. Unless, I guess, if you're doing something Halloween-y and you want your pumpkin's guts to be spilling all over, but that's a little morbid for me. So just taking 3 or 4 stitches across the top to make sure that's all nicely closed. And there we go. Now we've got this nice little stuffed sort of ballish fabric. And I can hear you saying, well, that's cute and all, but it really doesn't look like a pumpkin. So I'm going to double knot this thread here. And tie it off. Cut off the edges. And no, it doesn't look like a pumpkin, but now we have our secret ingredient. You also have in your kit a nice string of twine. Okay, so taking your twine and going over the halfway point, you're just going to cut at this, tie it around the middle of your pumpkin, double tie it on the bottom. You don't want it too tight, but you do want it to make a definite little dent in there. And for this bottom one, this first one, you do want to leave some end pieces. Then this is just ordinary kitchen twine, kind you pick up at the grocery store. Do it at right angles to the first piece, going over the top. Bringing it around the bottom. Double knotting it. I'm going to cut off this long tail here. Okay. Straighten that out a little. So it's nicely, you can see how it's nicely divided in quarters now. Whoa, I didn't do that right, but that's okay because I can just smush it along and there we go. Nicely in quarters. And we're going to do this 2 more times. So we end up with an 8-lobed pumpkin. Now I want to once again make sure everything looks straight and even so I have a nice 8-lobed pumpkin shape before I finish it off here. There we go. Squish you down a little. There we go. And then I'm going to take these two ends from the one that was on the bottom and double it, knot it again so they're all held in place. And even it out. Oh, it's starting to look a little pumpkin-y. Baby pumpkin. There we go. Okay. And now for the last part, the stem. I did put in your kit some sticks from my front yard. You might have little nicer sticks in your own front yard, or you could also just tie a piece of lace or rickrack up here, or if you happen to have extra wine corks around or anything like that, you can use that for the stem. Use your imagination. And I'm gonna get my trusty hot glue gun, though of course you could just use regular old craft glue and make a nice puddle of it here, but I like my hot glue gun because, you know. And just put a big puddle of glue on the top. Glunk, glunk, glunk. And take a stick, because I like how this just looks very, as I said, handcrafted and old-timey this way. I'm going to give it a little of a push to settle it in and count for just a minute to make sure it settles in place. There we go. And there we have a little baby pumpkin. And then we can match it up with Mama Pumpkin and Daddy Pumpkin. And there you have it, a cute little fall display.